Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into a story you probably think you know, but maybe not the whole picture. We're talking Ha-Natzrim, the Jewish Christians as the Jews saw them. You know the usual line, the Jews rejected Jesus, so the gospel went to the Gentiles. Simple. But today, our job is to challenge that narrative.
Hellenistic materialists, people who basically thought any talk of the supernatural was just primitive superstition. And here's the kicker. These same people were the ones running the temple establishment, all while privately thinking it was just, well, elaborate theater. That's the idea we're diving into.
Okay, let's set the scene. Jerusalem. Pentecost, 33 CE. It's about 9 in the morning. The city's packed, Jewish pilgrims everywhere from all over the empire, here for Shavuot, the festival, celebrating the giving of the law at Sinai. Then suddenly, this group of Galilean fishermen, they burst into the temple courts. And they're speaking languages they've never learned, proclaiming Jesus, the guy who was crucified, is alive. You can just imagine the reaction. Acts tells us people said, exactly what you'd expect. These men are drunk.
Right. This is like the obvious explanation. But then Peter stands up, and he gives this incredibly powerful sermon, hitting right at the core of Jewish hope, Jewish messianic expectation. And get this, by the end of that day, 3,000 people join them. Boom. The Ha-Natzrim are born.
Mm-hmm.
But crucially, they're not seen as a separate religion, not at all. They're a Jewish sect proclaiming Israel's own Messiah had arrived. And the timing, wow, it's the anniversary of the law at Sinai, and here they are talking about the new covenant that Jeremiah promised. The Jewish context is just undeniable.
Which makes you ask the big question, why on earth did they face such violent opposition? It seems counterintuitive.
It really does. So where does this unraveling begin? Where do we see the opposition taking shape? Well, it starts to become clear pretty quickly. In Acts chapters 3 and 4, Peter and John heal a man, someone lame since birth, right there at the temple's beautiful gate. Huge stir among the people. Astonishment. But the religious authorities, they are not happy. Furious, actually. And here's the detail that often gets glossed over from Acts 4. Verses 1 to 6 tell us who arrested them. It was specifically the Sadducees. Now, most people hear Sadducees and think, okay, another religious group. But what folks often don't grasp is that these guys were effectively ancient atheists running a religious show. I mean, the Gospels, after they all pointed out, the Sadducees denied the resurrection, they denied angels exist, denied spirits, denied God actually intervened in the world.
So their whole framework wasn't really rooted in Abraham and Moses. It was more like Epicurus of Samos, Greek philosophy.
Exactly. Pure Hellenistic materialism. They figured death was just the end, lights out, any claim about the supernatural, primitive superstition. If gods existed at all, they were way out there, totally uninvolved in human stuff.
But wait, these are the guys running the temple, performing sacrifices.
That's the stunning irony. These materialist skeptics are overseeing the daily sacrifices to a god they weren't sure was even listening, let alone existed. They're collecting tithes for a system they privately thought was just theater, upholding purity laws that, to them, had no real spiritual weight.
That level of cynicism is something else. So the temple services, the Holy of Holies.
All just performance art in their view. The high priest going into the Holy of Holies once a year, pageantry, and the fact that the Holy of Holies was, an empty chamber, no idol like in pagan temples, that just confirmed their suspicion.
The silence wasn't awe-inspiring, it was proof nobody was home.
Precisely. It proved to them that the whole thing was kind of illogical at its core, and this worldview totally trapped them. When they saw something undeniably supernatural, like Jesus healing the man born blind, their reaction wasn't awe. It was suspicion. They'd question the facts, interrogate the witnesses, try to poke holes, invent alternative explanations, anything but admit God might actually be acting.
It's like Jesus said, wasn't it? If I hadn't done works no one else did, they wouldn't have sin. But now they've seen and hated both me and my Father.
Exactly. It wasn't ignorance. It was willful blindness. A deliberate refusal to see what was right there.
And this wasn't just a reaction to Jesus or the apostles, or like this way of operating, this skepticism combined with ruthlessness. It had deeper roots.
Oh, absolutely. This Sadducean playbook wasn't new. It went back generations. You have to look at the Maccabees. The early Maccabean leaders, Judas, Jonathan, Simon, they were devout, like the Pharisees in belief. They died defending the law against Greek influence.
Okay, so where did it change?
The big shift, really a catastrophic one, happens under John Hyrcanus first, around 134 to 104 BCE. Josephus tells this story about a state dinner. Apparently, John Hyrcanus was publicly insulted by some Pharisees questioning his right to rule. He was humiliated politically.
Well, he needed new allies.
Exactly. And the Sadducees offered him what the Pharisees wouldn't. Respect, pragmatic politics, no pesky religious oversight. But this political deal turned into a spiritual disaster. John Hyrcanus, adopts Sadducean materialism,
Mhm.
and he passes that Epicurean framework down to his kids. Within a generation, the heirs of the guys who died fighting Hellenism had basically traded the God of Abraham for Greek philosophy, a distant, uninvolved God.
Wow. And you mentioned ruthlessness. This wasn't just philosophical disagreement. They could get violent.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Look at Honi the Circle Drawer, a revered, holy man back during the Civil War around 63 BCE. Sadducean supporters captured him and basically demanded he use his connection with God to curse their enemies, pray for their side to win.
And he wouldn't.
He refused to play politics with prayer. He prayed for mercy on both sides. So they stoned him, not for failing to pray, but for refusing to weaponize God for their cause.
Chilling. It shows a long pattern.
It really does. So if Acts 1-4 shows this vibrant Jewish movement meeting, skeptical but mostly contained opposition,
In Acts 5 is where it really escalates.
that's when the glows come off. The Sadducean establishment, seeing that bribes and threats weren't working, shows its two colors. This isn't just religious debate anymore. It's a political machine kicking into gear.
And it starts chromatically with Ananias and Sapphira.
Yeah, their deaths are shocking. And crucially, it's not the apostles doing violence. It's presented as direct divine judgment. Now, think about that from the Sadducean viewpoint. This is ideologically catastrophic for them.
Yeah.
It confirms exactly what they deny, an active, intervening God. It completely undermines their whole worldview.
So how do they react?
Mass arrests, they haul in the apostles. But it's not about religious purity. The text says it's pure jealousy because the apostles are gaining influence.
And then the angel frees them.
Right, an angel busts them out of jail, and what do? Go straight back to the temple and start preaching again.
The Sadducees must have been losing their minds.
You can imagine. Their rational, materialist framework just couldn't compute this. Supernatural jailbreak,
Yeah.
apostles defying them again, it just didn't fit their reality.
Which leads us to Stephen.
Yes, Stephen's martyrdom in Acts 6-8. This is a major turning point. It shows the Sadducean Herodian network because they often work together, dropping any pretense of religious legitimacy. This is open terrorism now. Systematic murder to crush dissent.
And Stephen's opponents weren't just local guys defending tradition.
No, look at Acts 6, verse 9. They're from the synagogue of the freedmen people from Cyrene, Alexandria, Cilicia, Asia. These are sophisticated international Jews, likely shaped by the very same Hellenistic materialist thinking that had taken over the Jerusalem leadership.
And Stephen doesn't hold back, does he? His final speech is incredibly powerful.
Absolutely brutal. He calls them stiff-necked people, uncircumcised in heart and ears, always resisting the Holy Spirit, just like their ancestors who persecuted the prophets.
And then the ultimate accusation. They killed those who announced beforehand the coming of the righteous one, whom you have now betrayed and murdered.
Oof. Yeah. That's not just theology. That's a direct charge. You are murderers. You betrayed your heritage. You're apostates running the show.
And their reaction.
Pure rage. They were enraged and they ground their teeth at him. This isn't righteous indignation. This is the fury of criminals being exposed in public.
So after Stephen, the persecution kicks off in earnest, led by Saul of Tarsus.
Yes, and this wasn't random mob violence. It was organized, planned. Saul had official authority from the Sadducean leadership.
So this marks the opposition going international.
Precisely. Saul represents the Sadducean machine trying to stamp out the Ha-Natzrim across the empire. Systematic elimination plans, legal maneuvering, the works.
But then comes the Damascus Road.
The ultimate irony, right? The Sadducees' own agent, their top persecutor, has this blinding encounter with the risen Christ. The very supernatural reality they insisted was impossible confronts their man head-on.
So Saul's conversion isn't just one more believer.
No, it's a massive validation of everything the Sadducees denied. And now they have Paul, an insider who knows their methods, becoming the movement's most articulate defender. Talk about strategy backfiring.
Okay, so persecution scatters the believers, but it doesn't crush the movement.
Quite the opposite. It spreads it, like wildfire. Which brings us to the Antioch breakthrough.
Right, Antioch on the Orontes. What happens there?
Something huge. These scattered Ha-Notzrim believers, they start talking about Jesus not just to other Jews, but directly to Greeks, to Gentiles.
And this is more than just translating the message.
Oh, much more. It's a transformation. The Jewish sect focused on Israel's Messiah is suddenly crossing ethnic lines. And Acts 11, verse 26, gives us that landmark moment. And in Antioch, the disciples were first called Christians, Christianoi.
A new name.
A new name reflecting a new realities like divine recognition. This thing that started within Judaism is now bigger. It's for everyone. The Ha-Natzrim have become the Christians.
And when was this happening, roughly?
Around 44 CE, so about 11 years after Pentecost, from a Jewish sect to an international religious movement attracting all sorts. It's a remarkable shift.
So beneath all this visible conflict, this persecution and spread, there's this deeper drama playing out.
Definitely. You've got the Jewish leadership acting in their minds like responsible parents trying to correct wayward children within their community. That's their framework.
But at the same time, you're suggesting God is trying to guide them, the leaders, towards recognizing this thing he's doing.
Exactly. It's this incredible paradox. God is parenting the parents, so to speak, trying to shepherd the shepherds.
And then there's the even deeper layer you mentioned, Satan's strategy.
Right. Which seems, well, diabolically clever. The idea is to exploit all the cracks in Jewish society, not just the religious disagreements. Use the tensions between the rich aristocracy and the poor, the anger against Roman collaboration, the rise of radical groups like the Zealots and Sicarii. Use all that friction.
To destabilize everything.
Yes, create so much internal pressure that society starts to tear itself apart. The opposition to Christians is just one piece of a much bigger game plan aimed at total chaos, leading towards what Revelation calls the sea beast, this anti-God power structure.
Okay, back to the leadership. You said they saw the Ha-Notzrim initially as sort of misguided family members.
Pretty much. These weren't outsiders initially. They were fellow Jews, often learned, clearly devout, who'd just gone off on this problematic tangent about Jesus. So the first impulse was correction, guidance, using the usual methods. There was real concern, maybe even mixed with a bit of admiration.
Admiration.
Well, reports probably came back about their knowledge of Scripture, their passion, their moral integrity, which made their error about Jesus seem even more tragic to the leadership.
Like they're so close, yet so wrong.
Something like that. And a big worry was stopping this infection spreading to Gentiles who looked to Jewish communities for guidance. Can't have the Gentiles getting the wrong idea.
But when Christians talked about actual miracles, healings, the resurrection,
Materialist leadership just couldn't accept it. It had to be fake. Elaborate hoaxes, tricks, maybe mass delusion, even faced with evidence their worldview wouldn't allow for it.
so they sent people to watch the Christian meetings, like spies.
Yeah, for intelligence gathering. But it kind of backfired, or rather, God used it. These observers kept coming back confused. They saw deep biblical knowledge, real moral goodness, genuine spiritual power. And when challenged, the Christians didn't react with anger. They responded with, well, love and patience. It confounded expectations.
This must have been a nightmare for the leadership. Their usual tools weren't working.
Exactly. They were trained in philosophical debate, scriptural argument. But Christian reasoning seemed different, sophisticated, yet somehow immune to their usual refutations. It was a totally new kind of pastoral challenge.
And all this while Satan is stirring the pot elsewhere.
Right. Exploiting every grievance. The rich Sadducees exploiting the poor. Check. Corrupt priests. Check. Romans getting help from the elite. Check. Plenty of fuel for resentment.
And you mentioned the Sicarii, the assassins. That was Satan's
A
masterstroke.
really clever one, yeah. Create this group that blends religious fervor with violence. It attracts Jews hungry for action, for purity, but channels that intense messianic energy away from the peaceful Christian message. It's a perfect diversion.
So even Paul's arrest in Jerusalem, that fits into this bigger picture.
It's a key moment in God's parenting process, you could say. Here's Paul, former top Pharisee, standing before them, able to explain why he changed. It forces them to confront the issues intellectually. But the leadership is stuck. Their spies bring back reports of good fruit morality, spiritual life, which should signal God's approval.
But the theology is unacceptable to their worldview.
Exactly. It's an impossible paradox for them. The surveillance becomes this unintentional education in Christian reality, but they can't process it.
Meanwhile, Satan's recruiting.
From everywhere, disappointed elites, angry commoners, radical religious types, people just looking for opportunity in the chaos. He's building this coalition of discontent.
Creating this weird dependence between the corrupt leaders and the revolutionaries.
Yeah, dangerous codependence.
Yeah.
The elite need the radicals to challenge Rome. The radicals need the elite's resources.
Yeah.
But they secretly hate each other. It's designed to implode.
And even things like employers withholding wages from Christians.
Mentioned in James 5, yeah. There wasn't just greed. It was likely seen as legitimate pressure. See, your bad theology has real-world consequences. Come back to the fold. It was discipline, but totally misguided.
So Christians become this aroma of death, not because they're bad, but because their existence highlights the failure of the old ways.
Precisely. Their consistent love, the refusal to retaliate under pressure, it just keeps showing that their faith works, producing the results the leaders claim to want, but achieved through means the leaders couldn't accept.
The leadership is trapped. Their Greek training, their materialism, it's blinded them. Just like Jesus warned.
They're caught in a system they created, unable to see God's hand, even when the evidence in years of observed Christian behavior, moral fruit, is overwhelming.
And the pressure on Christians just keeps ramping up.
Unbelievably so. Public mockery, being treated like traitors for not joining nationalist riots, neighbors breaking in and stealing their stuff, imprisonment, threat of execution, while ironically, the loudest, most boastful, most violent figures in society are being hailed as heroes. And the Christians, practicing love, despised as weaklings, cowards.
Until the leadership tries one last strategy, James the Just.
Yes, Jesus' own brother. Seems brilliant, right? He's respected by everyone. Deeply Jewish, morally impeccable. If anyone can bridge this gap, offer a balanced view, it's James.
But this attempt to control the situation backfires spectacularly.
It becomes Satan's final trap. They put James up on the temple pinnacle, expecting him to, gently correct the Jesus movement, bring things back into line.
Yet instead,
He gives the most powerful public testimony to Jesus' divinity they could possibly imagine. Declares Jesus is seated at God's right hand, coming on the clouds, everything they feared.
and the crowd's reaction,
Hosanna to the Son of David.
their worst nightmare. Their plan to moderate ends up triggering this massive public affirmation of Jesus. It fulfills Jesus' own prophecy, doesn't it? You won't see me again until you say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord."
Exactly. 32 years later, the condition is met, ironically, by the crowd the leadership themselves gathered.
So throwing James off the pinnacle, it wasn't cold calculation.
More like an emotional meltdown. The end of the line for these leaders. They've tried everything within their framework, and it's all blown up in their faces. It's the violence of exhaustion, of failed control, like parents lashing out because they just don't know what else to do. Tragic, really. Misguided love turned violent.
And then, 43 days after James's martyrdom, heavenly armies appear.
Yes, God's judgment phase begins. Human authority had its chance, made its choice. Now comes the divine response.
And the reaction splits along worldview lines again.
Completely. The Sadducean leaders, trapped in materialism, they dismiss it,
Yeah.
rationalize it away. Maybe a weird weather phenomenon, who knows? But the zealots, the revolutionaries, they see it through the lens of Maccabees 5. Heavenly armies mean God's on their side. It's the green light for war against Rome. They hijacked a sign for their own violent agenda.
So by 62 CE, it's a runaway train.
Totally. The radical nationalists feel divinely sanctioned now. Time to settle scores. Punish the collaborating aristocracy, crush the traitor Christians, overthrow Rome. The whole explosive mix is about to ignite.
And the ultimate irony is,
The Ha-Natzrim, the Christians, were actually living the original Maccabean dream. God's active power, supernatural intervention, face over politics, everything the Sadducean descendants had abandoned. They traded their ancestors' faith for Greek skepticism, for functional atheism dressed in religious robes.
so Stephen's death really was the symbolic moment, the corrupted heirs killing the faithful inheritors.
Precisely. It was never just Jews versus Christians. It was Abraham and Moses versus Epicurus. Divine reality versus materialism. Faithful hope versus cynical power.
And the name change to Christians captures that shift, from fulfilling Jewish hopes to becoming the hope for everyone.
And because they refused violence, refused political sides, loved their enemies, they were positioned outside the coming explosion. Their righteousness, in a way, became their shield.
Wow. This really does turn the simple narrative on its head. It wasn't just a religious argument, was it? It was a deep clash of realities.
Absolutely. And the core takeaway has to be that the most intense opposition came from those whose entire worldview denied the very supernatural reality that Ha-Natzrim were experiencing and proclaiming. It's a chilling example of willful blindness, ultimately leading to self-destruction.
Which leaves us with a thought, maybe for you listening, how often, maybe even in our own lives, do we lock ourselves into a framework, a way of seeing the world that blinds us to evidence challenging our assumptions? Like the Sadducees, maybe even one facing that evidence could save us from, well, disaster.
And yet through all that human resistance, all that systemic corruption, you see God patiently working, bringing forth something new, vindicating truth in the end. It's more than just history. It's a pattern of how God works, even in the midst of chaos.